morning sun shines on the gleaming hide of a muscular ranch horse. The aroma of bacon and coffee drifts from the wood cook stove at a cow camp. Silver spurs jingle as the men and women of the West get set for another day in the saddle. From the heart of Canada's finest ranching country, this is the Spirit of the West with rancher and horse trainer Hugh McLennan and his collection of music, poetry, and conversations with the folks who live and work with horses and cattle in the Spirit of the West.
A tired horse walks out of the trailer at the end of the day after gathering and sorting yearlings at a neighbor's ranch. One of those days when we're both tired, but I hope my old horse feels as much satisfaction as I do from a day doing that. And this week, the Rangeland News has a story of some concern.
USDA is confirming a single case of atypical bovine spongiform encephalopathy, or BSE.
That's the headline. You'll hear the details on the Rangeland News. And Baxter Black freely offers his opinion on those butterfly weddings.
Imagine those sturdy folk all around the Great Lakes marrying off their daughter in a fish wedding. It could take place in knee-deep water on the edge of a cranberry bog.
That guy never runs out of ideas. And the listener has a good horse he really likes, but the horse has one big problem he can't seem to work through. I'll tell you what it is and what to do about it on the Urban Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File. And I think you'll really enjoy our classic Song of the West this week, and the singer will explain why she sang it at a big music awards ceremony. Now, if you think starting colts is easy, well, maybe you need to think about some of the other things that can and do happen.
I broke a hip, my toric groin, and I got a little concussion, but we both got all right, and the little old horse really, after that, we didn't have any more bobbles.
Yeah, I think he said baubles, not marbles. And that's award-winning cowboy poet and horseman Dennis Flynn, and he'll have the rest of that story today. Dennis raises top-level foundation quarter horses in Texas, and I'll visit with him after Michael Martin Murphy opens up the gate.
Well, they mixed a little Celtic with Spanish blood and a dash of thoroughbred. So the legend begins of America's horse, a horse with a level head. If he's cutting cattle out on the ranch or making some cowboy shine, there's never been a horse like America's horse crossing that finish line. Oh yes, I'm a quarter horse rider, saddle up and let me run. America's horse won't let you down when there's running or work to be done. Pony that's got some sense and knows how to work a cow, a horse that's rugged and keeps his head, takes off running right now. You can bet your money and bet your boots when he runs that quarter mile. You tie that calf in money time while the fans in the stands go wild. Oh yes, I'm a quarter horse rider, saddle up and let me run. America's horse won't let you down when there's running or work to be done. And there's work to be done. All the names of the ones that went before will live on through all time. Old Janus and Sir Archie in colonial days started the great bloodline. There was Steel Dust Traveler, Old Kodak, Little Joe King and Peter McHugh, Yellow Jacket, Cowboy, Old Joe Bailey, Jenny and Della Moore too. There was Shiloh, Billy, and Locks Rondo. How old and Tucker could run. Old Fred, Xanathon, Cocho Colonel, and Joe Hancock, the mighty one.
Dennis Flynn raises top-level quarter horses, and I had a visit with him the year he won the award as Cowboy Poet of the Year at the Academy of Western Artists in Fort Worth.
My parents were in the quarter horse business, and all growing up I was in them, and then I went to college shoeing horses and rodeoing, and then we're in the foundation quarter horse business now. We raise some kind of big bone, stout type ranch horses.
And do you show on the show circuit as well?
We don't. Mostly we're raising horses that we can take and drag calves on, rope some steers on. We raise a lot for the team ropers around here. Anything that has any kind of cow in it, kind of a big bone, stout ranch type horse is what we're looking for, and most of them are pretty foundation bred.
Up in our country, there's a real demand, and you just can't find enough good, well-broke ranch geldings. And if you got one that's done some ranch work, and you can make some big circles on them in the rough country, and then you can also go to work in the pens and do some sorting, and you can do some pasture doctoring. That's the kind of horses that bring a lot of money. Imagine, is it the same down here, the real demand for them?
Yes, sir, it is. What we're finding is, especially with today's cowboys here, it's mostly weekend people. So a horse that we can cut off is worth a whole lot more to us than one little rope, because a lot of these folks don't rope. We have so many people that are professionals that cowboy on the weekends. So if we can get something, they're either team pinners, or if they rope, then they're team ropers. And if we'll take a horse, if we can get one that's really broke in the bridle, something that'll move around and stout enough to do some work, like you said, something that's gentle for anybody, those will bring some good dollars. And then the ones that are really doing well for us have been our colored horses lately. We had last year we bred a gray, a black, a gruya, and a buckskin stud. And next year we're going to stick with 2 gruya studs. And we're getting quite a bit of color on some of those horses. We're getting a lot of gruya and blue roan horses, and people are liking them.
Does that gruya color reproduce pretty faithfully? If you've first place, a gruya stud might be pretty hard to find. And if you cross him with a dun mare, is that going to, the odds are you're going to get a gruya colt?
Maybe not a gruya. What we're getting with a gruya and a dun, your odds of getting a gruya are 50-50. With our gruya, and that's the best cross there is. With our gruya, and we're not giving up conformation, and we're not giving up a good mind horse to get the color. The color is third to us. But what we're doing is we're putting, most of our mares are duns, red duns, buckskins, and we're putting them on there. And last year, every horse that our gruya stud had color. We had a few red duns, quite a few duns, several buckskins, and a handful of gruyas.
What would the pedigree background be on that gruya stud?
The gruya stud is, he goes back to Otto and Otto Wonder Seeker bars, and Colonel Freckles. Oh, yeah. Jules Leo bars and Freckles.
So there's some cow back there.
There's a whole lot of cow. Most of our mares, we have quite a few King Ranch bred mares. We've got some organ grinder mares. We've got some El Rey Rojo type bred mares, some Mr. San Pepe bred mares.
Coming up, Dennis describes in detail what went wrong with a ride on a promising colt and the fairly serious injuries that resulted, and another pretty good song about a cowboy and his horse when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. I guess every time we swing our leg over a colt for the first time, or a horse we don't know much about, or even one we think we do know quite a bit about, there's always that slight element of uncertainty about it. And then when we put slack in the reins and ask them for a little speed, there can be more uncertainty. And that's how it went for Dennis Flynn a few years ago.
What kind of a procedure to go through when you're in the round pen with that colt for the first time? Just take me through that process a little bit.
Most everything we do is kind of a ray hunt type method. None of us profess to be ray hunt, but everything we do is real gentle. Get the horse coming to us, get him working that way. We take him real slow. The last quite a few horses we've had, I guess we've had one that's even pitched at all. Most of them don't pitch a lick.
Is that the one you were telling me about the other night that you took to the sale?
Yes, sir. She was a tad humpy.
How did that little episode go again? I can't remember.
Well, I had a couple. I guess the one you and I were talking about, I had a little red roan Hancock horse, and he didn't do anything wrong, but I couldn't get any forward motion from him. And as long as, when I first get on them, I don't care if they walk or trot or lope, whatever they do, as long as they're not real humpy. And I had the little horse, and I just couldn't get him to move. He was gentle. I'd driven him enough that he'd turn and he'd handle back and forth, but he wouldn't move. So I took him out in the pen. I've got a pipe arena behind the house, and the horse just got scared. I kicked him up, and he ran us both into the fence. So when he laid us down, it knocked him out and it knocked me out. So when my wife looked out, I was laying in the arena, and I was down, and she was afraid to say anything. She thought I'd say, well, you know, she thought I'd say, oh, honey, leave me alone, I'm fine. Well, she went and put her makeup on and got dressed and came out 20 or 30 minutes later, and I was still unconscious, and so was the horse. And I broke a hip, and I tore a groin, and I got a little concussion, but we both got all right, and the little old horse really, after that, we didn't have any more bobbles. He was fine, and we went on with him, and I'm proud to say I don't own him anymore, but he did make a pretty nice little horse.
It must have been interesting when you finally went through your whole rehabilitation process and were able to get back on a horse. Getting back on that one for the first time must have brought a few things through your mind.
Not really. He was, like I say, if they've got a bad attitude, I'll send them with somebody that's a whole lot better than us. But for what we're doing out there, he was a good-minded colt, and you know, every one of us has made mistakes.
Oh, for me a horse and saddle, every day without a change, with a desert sun a-blazing on 100 miles of range. Just a riding, desert rippling in the sun, mountain blue along the skyline, I don't envy anyone. When my feet are in the stirrups and my horse is on the bust, when his hooves are flashing lightning from a golden cloud of dust, and the bawling of the cattle is coming down the wind, of a finer life than riding would be mighty hard to find. Just a riding, splitting long cracks in the air, stirring up a baby cyclone, rooting up the prickly pear. I don't need no hard exhibits when the sunset does his best, ain't everlasting glories on the mountains of the west, and your operas look foolish when the nightbird starts his tune, and the desert silver mounted by the kisses of the moon. Just a riding, I don't envy kings nor czars when the coyotes down the valley are singing to the stars. When my earthly trail has ended and my final bacon curled, and the last great roundup's finished at the home ranch of the world, I don't want no harps or halos, robes or other dress-up things. Let me ride the starry ranges on a pin-o horse with wings. Just a riding, splitting chunks of wintry air, with your feet froze to your stirrups and a snowdrift in your hair.
Well, that guy manages a big horse and cattle operation in Oklahoma, and he's also a very popular entertainer around those parts, Gary Pratt. So the consequences of that ride on a colt were a broken hip, a torn groin muscle, and a concussion, but Dennis healed up and the colt turned out just fine.
Is that one of the more severe wrecks you've survived?
We don't have a whole lot of wreck stories, and we try and forget those. My partners, one of them broke his back, and one of them caught a saddle horn behind and broke his pelvis, and we've had some wrecks in there, but for the most part, like I say, we're working with good, gentle kind of horses. We get them real broke in the bridle, get them started and stopping and turning around and handling, And those are what we're pretty much going on with.
Do you get a chance to ride them outside in some big country too?
We don't ride them much inside. I'll ride them a time or two in the round pen. I don't like them to get bored with anything. I then go to my arena. The biggest help with the arena, we don't do much with them normally in the arena. It just gives me a kind of a confined place, and it has lights, so that helps. But almost all of the work and training that we do on a young horse, we do on the trail.
Dennis Flynn will be back in the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight a little later this week with something I think you're really going to enjoy. And then Baxter Black's fertile mind has been hard at work. You'll hear the results of his thoughts on the butterfly wedding, and another song about cowboy life from a sure enough working cowboy, and then that story of another case of BSE in a beef cow headlines the Rangeland News when the Spirit of the West continues right after this.
Howdy, friends. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan with a little peek at the butterfly wedding. Ladies and gentlemen and followers of cowboy humor, I have carved another book from my funny bone, guaranteed to tickle your humorous. Sorry. The title is Scrambled Wisdom. Almost isn't is it? Which almost makes sense. Regardless, it's almost $20, only $19.95 plus shipping. Call 800-654-2550 or online at baxterblack.com. A new phenomenon is upon us. The butterfly wedding. Butterfly breeders offer boxes of monarch butterflies to brides and mothers of brides. They arrive chilled and are warmed up for the big moment, then released in a golden cloud. It's very romantic and fairly expensive. For those on a smaller budget, the moth wedding might be more appropriate. This wedding takes place in the dark, with the bride wearing a coal miner's helmet. The reheated moths are released, and the bride switches on her headlamp. For an extra $10, the helmet can be fitted with a bug zapper, so the light show can be augmented with sound effects. As this wedding fad begins to spread, I can see entrepreneurs reaching out beyond the traditional butterfly kiss and cake ceremony. Imagine those sturdy folk all around the Great Lakes marrying off their daughter in a fish wedding. It could take place in knee-deep water on the edge of a cranberry bog, or in a hockey arena down on the ice. Choreographed just as the groom says, "I do," the entire audience in the hockey rink grandstand would repeat, "Yeah, he does," and throw a 6-pound mullet over the glass barrier. The wedding party would be up to their halibut in seafood. The bride could toss a can of tuna to the expectant bridesmaids, and the best man would be clad in a rented tux and snorkel. Not to be outdone, the Society for Fun with Fungus would offer toadstool weddings. The bride and groom could exchange ringworm, and truffles would be served at the reception. The wedding cake would have lichens on the north side. Well, it's not that theme weddings haven't been done. I can remember reading about motorcycle weddings, skydiving weddings, scuba weddings, cowboy weddings, and spelunker weddings, for example, all flamboyant, planned primarily to get their picture in the paper. But the butterfly wedding strikes me as a little less ostentatious, beautiful, but not garish. Yet even the butterfly nuptials might be a little showy for some. They could opt for the quieter themes, such as the elegant pollen wedding, the classic cheese wedding, or the subdued ceremony featuring dental floss, although there's no guarantee. You can never tell about some of those wild dental hygienists. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan. Thanks for listening.
Farm Fair International, one of Canada's top agricultural shows, returns this November 7th to 11th. Guests from around the world will gather in the Edmonton region to show and sell top-quality livestock, make important connections, share knowledge, and build our industry. While you're there, enjoy shopping in Ram Country Marketplace or take in the Heritage Ranch Rodeo. It's a big deal to buy, sell, and connect. Make sure you're there. Plan your visit at farmfairinternational.com.
Howdy, everybody. From way down in the American Southwest, Albuquerque, New Mexico, I'm Rick Huff, host of the Best of the West Review. You know, most Western music is true music. Same with cowboy poetry. It tells the cowboy story the way it really is. But never does it ring any more true than when a real cowboy's doing the telling.
I can recall when I was 15, my head was full of cowboy dreams. Way out west across Great Divide. And the old boy said when I hired on, there weren't much fence here, the good times are gone. gave me a job horse back in these modern times. Now I'm wearing out ropes on the cattle I capture way out on Saskatchewan pastures, making my living horseback in these modern times. Well, I've been around so I can attest to cowboying all across Canada's west, making my living horseback in these modern times. Now the ground is the same, but the fences are new, and there's a few more gates than we're used to. Doing a job they said wouldn't last this long, but here we are, the old bar 11. Now them good old boys are smiling down from heaven. We're making a living horseback in these modern times. And I'm wearing out ropes on the cattle I capture way out on Saskatchewan pasture, making my living horseback in these modern times. Well, I've been around so I can attest, I'm cowboying all across Canada's west, making my living horseback in these modern times. Teachers said, don't you waste your time, 'cause that cowboy life is dead or dying. But here I am riding for wages today. So this is for all you young buckaroos, don't you get in a rush now, finish school. There's plenty of jobs horseback in these modern times. And I'm wearing out ropes on the cattle I capture way out on Saskatchewan pastures, making my living horseback in these modern times. I've been around so I can attest, cowboying all across Canada's west, making my living horseback in these modern times. Yes, I'm making my living horseback in these modern times.
Of course, is Ryan Fritz.
Now the news of the Rangeland, a roundup of news and coming events from around the West.
At the top of page 1, some concerning news for U.S. cattle producers.
USDA is confirming a single case of atypical bovine spongiform encephalopathy, or BSE.
The Veterinary Services Laboratory diagnosed an atypical H-type BSE in a 6-year-old mixed-breed beef cow that was located in Florida.
That was USDA's chief veterinarian, Dr. Jack Shear.
So there's basically two types of BSE that we look for. One is the classical, and that's the type that we saw in England during their huge outbreak that was linked to Creutzfeldt-Jakob in humans. This is not that type. This is a spontaneously generated type of BSE that occurs in all cattle all over the world.
He says the animal in question was tested as part of strict U.S. surveillance guidelines.
We do want to be transparent as we can be though when we find these, and to let the world know as soon as possible.
This does not change the World Organization for Animal Health's designation of the United States as a country with negligible BSE risk. This is Stephanie Ho for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
One of the biggest first big feeder sales of the year last month saw 18,324 head sold by the Southern Alberta Livestock Exchange via video at Chain Lakes, Alberta. And prices for 700 to 800 pound steers range from $209.95 to $220 per hundredweight, and those 800 to 900 pound steers traded a little lower at $199.75 to $207.75. And steers 900 to 1,000 pounds went for $185.50 to $199.50, and those over 1,000 pounds sold in a range from $189.50 to $194.75. And on the heifer side, 800 to 900 pound heifers off grass sold for $177 to $185.75, and those same weights off feed sold for $166 to $180.75. And the heavier ones up to 1,000 pounds brought $170 to $190, and the heavier heifers over 1,000 pounds sold for $170 to $179.50. Well, a landowner in San Francisco Bay Area of California has been arrested after he allegedly shot and buried 11 head of cattle following a dispute over grazing with his tenants. Officers from the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office arrested Mark Bellamini, 54, of Fremont, California, on August the 27th for 11 counts of animal cruelty, 2 counts of illegal cattle driving, and brandishing a firearm. 11 cattle were exhumed from a mass grave on his land near Morgan Hill, where shell casings were found, and according to the sheriff's office, there were fragments of high-powered rifle rounds in some of the dead cattle. The cattle were owned by a pair of ranchers who had an agreement with Bellamini to graze his 1,500 acres of pasture land, and the sheriff's office says it was clear that the grazing arrangement was beginning to break down. And eventually a disagreement occurred, and one of the tenants wanted to remove some of the 60 cattle from the land, and at this point it's alleged that Bellamini, brandishing a rifle at his outgoing grazing tenant, and gates to the pasture were locked. Wow, shades of the Old West near San Francisco. An investigation led by the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture resulted in the arrest of Madeline Drotton and Austin Temple, who allegedly attempted to sell stolen cattle. In August, the pair brought in 7 head to the Purcell Livestock Auction in Oklahoma, and running the auction barn for 4 decades, C.T. Stallings thought something was strange. After inspecting the brands, he realized they were owned by his friend Glenn Floyd because they bore his FC brand, which stands for Floyd Cattle. After the cattle were positively identified by Floyd, a call was made to Jerry Flowers, the chief agent of investigative services at the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, and Jerry sat hidden behind the seat at the sale barn desk the next day when the sale was hosted, and waiting for Drowan to come and collect a check for $7,500, and Drowan and the partner Temple were arrested by Flowers after accepting the check and confessing to stealing the cattle. Well, the October 2nd sale at the BC Livestock Co-op Yards in Kamloops is a calf, yearling, and regular sale. And on October 3rd, a calf sale in Williams Lake, and then the regular Williams Lake sale on October 4th. And there's a pre-sort sale in Vanderhoof on October the 5th. You can get all the information at bclivestock.bc.ca. Meanwhile, over at the Innisfail Auction Market, regular cattle sales every Wednesday, and they are starting some pre-sort sales now, so give them a call to book your cattle for the regular sales or the pre-sort sales. Their number is 1-800-710-3166. Now the final item. It was his first week of school in the first grade. He was 6 years old, and he was in trouble. The teacher said, "I don't know what I'm going to do with you. You sure talk a lot in class." And he said, "Oh, I can't really help it, teacher. It's hereditary. My uncle is an auctioneer. My cousin's a rodeo announcer, and my dad's a radio announcer." And the teacher says, "Well, what about your mom?" He says, "Well, she's a woman." And that's the Rangeland News. Coming up on the Urban Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File, I'll look at a listener's problem that is actually pretty common, but he's having a hard time getting past it. And we'll talk about various ways to start young horses with a fine ranch gal from Oregon. And we have some of that clean, crisp music of the West when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. Coming up in the Urban Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File, a rider has a pretty nice horse, well broke, good to ride, sound and healthy. Sounds like a commercial. But the horse has one problem that this guy can't seem to solve, and we'll look at what it is and what to do about it coming right up on the Urban Saddles and Western Wear Horse Training File. But first, you might be interested in this. So what are you doing from August 29th to September 13th, 2019? Well, Billy and I will be hosting our 18th annual Spirit of the West cruise, and here's where we'll be going. We'll fly to Dublin, Ireland. We'll be visiting an Irish thoroughbred breeding farm. We'll be hosted by the Irish Cattle Breeding Federation, and then we'll sail to some historic and beautiful places including Cork, Belfast, then Glasgow and Inverness, Scotland. And we might even get pictures of Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster. and we'll have stops in Paris and London. Now, this is something we've always wanted to do, and we'd love to have you join us. Get all the information at 1-800-530-0131. And check our Spirit of the West cruise page at hugh-mclennan.com and our cruise Facebook page.
Now it's time for the Horse Training File, brought to you by Irvine Tack and Western Wear, Canada's largest Western store.
The way I see it, you'll find a silver lining in just about everything. So as summer says, adios amigos, it's just another great reason to get over to Irvine Tack and Western Wear. Boots, jeans, shirts, gloves, hoodies, jackets, exciting fall arrivals to keep you toasty when the temperature dips and drops. Irvine's has something for everyone, from cowboys and cowgirls to city folks too. It's Western wear with a welcome twist. Off Highway 305 on Highway 2 by Crossfield, open 7 days a week.
Don't just wear it, live it. Irvine Tack and Western Wear.
It's something very few horses have not done at one time or another, and the more they've done it, the more difficult it is to fix. The old idea was to put an unbreakable halter on the horse with an unbreakable shank and tie it to a post set in concrete and let him pull back till he learns not to. Bad idea. There's a very good chance of serious injury to the horse, and it won't stop him from pulling back. Some old-timers have suggested using a belly rope. That's a lariat with a loop behind his front legs and the end running up through the halter and tied to the post. Sometimes it works, but there's a better way. You see, when the problem is chronic, it becomes a conditioned response. Every time the horse feels the halter shank tied to something solid, it triggers the instinctive pullback behavior. His survival instinct is kicking in, and the tighter he's tied, the more he'll try to escape by pulling back. The longer the horse has been doing it, the longer it'll take to get him over it. But here's what I'd like to work on. Immediately stop tying him to anything solid. Work on getting a soft yield to the halter shank when you're working with him on the ground. And then find a smooth tie ring, like maybe the one on the outside of a well-made trailer. Feed the shank through the ring, but don't tie it. If he pulls back, just let him pull the shank through the ring. What? I can hear you saying that'll teach him that if he pulls back, he can get away. Well, no. That'll teach him that there is not a shock when he hits the end of the shank, and it'll help him short-circuit the pullback response. It might mean holding on to him with the reins of the halter shank while all the other riders tie their horses up. It might take several months or longer, and it might not work at all, but at least you reduce the chance of injuring the horse, damaging equipment, or having somebody get hurt. For Irvine Tack and Western Wear, that's the Horse Training File. You know, our horses sure seem to thrive on that daily feeding of Hoffman's horse ration. They all get one now, and the one feeding a day, that is, and you can find out all about it at hoffmanshorseration.com. Are you looking to improve production and increase profitability in your beef operation? Come to Beef Tech, November 8th and 9th. This interactive beef industry learning event will give you the opportunity to explore and experience emerging technologies and innovative management practices. Keynote presentations include Marty Seymour, Farm Credit Canada, the Peterson Farm Brothers, and Jim Bottomley. Don't miss this great opportunity to learn from leading industry experts and increase your profitability. Register at northlands.com/beeftech. I'll be talking with an Oregon cowgirl about horses and why we love them so much, after one from Doug Figgs, the Singin' Farrier.
Are big and full of fire. She's wondering if she should stay. She's kinda scared, but she's curious. She takes a step my way. She moves just like a cat. She's pretty and she's fine. I think she'll make a good one, that little bay filly of mine. Sometimes I get tired. I wonder if I'm wasting my time. Then I stop, I smell the horse. It helps to ease my mind. Because it's all about the horses. When that bug bites, there ain't no other way. It'll be all about the horses till my dying day. Yes, it's all about the horses. When that bug bites, there ain't no other way. It'll be all about the horses till my dying day.
A few years ago, a ranch-raised cowgirl from Oregon was the winner of the Female Vocalist of the Year award from the Western Music Association. The award ceremony was at the WMA Convention and Festival in Tucson, and that's where I had a good chance to visit with Lorraine Rawls. And she had driven a lot of teams over the years, and at first we were talking about horses that sometimes run away.
I can ride as fast as he can run. What
Yeah.
you said kind of reminded me.
Same thing, yeah. I am so pleased to see that there's people like Ray Hunt and Pirelli out there with the methods. We've talked about this, doing that, because, you know, you've got to build that trust from the beginning, and I hate to see people rush them into things. And
So you've noticed this kind of change in the way
absolutely
a lot of horsemen, horse people are approaching training and approaching horse handling.
Yeah, and I am so glad. And of course, I can get on a soapbox about showing and all that, because I think people rush horses way too much for the showing end of it. And I'd like to see them. I'm going to give you my little political opinion. I'd love to see them push the futurities up at least another year, if not more, and quit starting those babies and quit sliding, stopping them for the reining classes and cutting. And you know, I just think that just ruins them in the long run.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see them go slower with them.
Glad to hear you say that, because I have a lot of people come up to me and say, I want this 2-year-old in the futurity next year. He's 16 months old. Can I bring him up to your place? Will you start him? I won't do that.
No, and I'm glad you're doing that, because I'll tell you, nothing gets, you know, it gets me going to think about that. And there's plenty of time for these horses to be doing that, and you shouldn't be just running them through like, you know, meat rack, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, I love horses, and I think people like you love horses, and so you train them that way. And they're going to trust you, and they're going to get you through the long haul.
What I've noticed too, and I think probably the same thing is happening in your state and some of the other states, is that some of these ranch rodeos for working cowboys, the level of horsemanship that you can see going on there is, and this is with all due respect to professional rodeo, it's wonderful entertainment. It's a high-speed sport, and tie-downs and mechanical hackamores sometimes are a part of it in some of the roping horses and the pickup horses.
When I see those.
Yeah, I kind of do too. But you watch some of these working cowboys that spend their life and trust their life to that horse all by themselves, and they're working usually in snaffle bits. Sometimes they're up in the bridle in a spade, but it's with a feather light touch. There is no tie down. And when they're in the team penning, a timed event, that horse is working with his head down, he's back on his hocks, and his mouth is never open, he's never rooting his nose out, and the horsemanship at that level is something to see, and it kind of proves it can be done.
I love seeing that, and I love seeing them in the snaffle, and there's no reason, in my opinion, why you should move a horse off a snaffle ever. I think you can leave them in them the rest of their lives, unless you need to be doing stuff that requires, you know, more finesse. But yeah, I love seeing that, and you know, all my horses are in snaffles, and of course, you know, I pack a lot and trail ride, and I don't show, but so that's why I have these radical opinions of.
Yeah. Now, in our classic Song of the West segment coming right up, you will hear the song that Lorraine sang at that awards presentation, and she'll explain why she picked that song. And then Dennis Flynn in the Cowboy Poetry Spotlight when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. Now, this is our classic Song of the West segment, and from the vast collection of songs left to us by Wilf Carter, this is one that's been a favorite of his fans for decades, and it was one of Wilf's personal favorites as well. And we'll go back to the Western Music Association Award Show in Tucson, Arizona, a number of years ago. Billy and I were there in the audience, and each award candidate got to do one song in front of that big, big crowd. Lorraine Rawls was one of the nominees, and she chose that song of Wilf Carter's, and we talked about it after the presentation.
When you did a version that touched my heart of Old Alberta Plains, I don't know why you chose that song, but that was special.
I thought of you, Hugh, when I was picking a song to do for that show, and I could only pick one song, and that's real tough to pick one song. Yeah. And I thought, you know, there's people like Shirley Field and yourself that are from Canada, and not only does that song, the Old Alberta Plains, which is an old Wilf Carter tune, not only does it touch the hearts of Canadians, but it also touches the hearts of cowboys. I mean, that song speaks to, you know, it talks about someone who's reminiscing and thinking about, you know, wanting to swing on that horse and ride, and there's some sadness to it, but it's still joyful in some ways too. And I love the song. That's one of my favorite pieces, and it's I feel very emotional when I sing it.
There's a spot that is dear to the heart of old cowboys who once rode the Broncos, darn hard to tame. I hid in the saddle at the first streaks of daylight, singing a song of old Alberta plain. Low of the cattle, the flame sunset and branding straight, that ain't none to blame, but rolls the chuck wagon and the old cook complaining. It's all in the life on old Alberta plain. Oh, carry me back to the plains of Alberta. I long to go back to the wide rolling range on the bright sunny hillside. I'll sit there a-dreaming of those good old days on old Alberta plain. I've ridden the ranges they call dear old Texas, crossed to Montana. To me they're the same. There's no place on earth that loves so sincerely than to be back again on old Alberta plain. Oh, carry me back to the plains of Alberta. I long to go back pale moon is rising high up in the heavens. I'm feeling so lonely, heart full of pain. If I only could swing once again in the saddle like I did years ago on old Alberta plain. Oh, carry me back to the plains of Alberta. I long to go back to the wide rolling range on the bright sunny hillside. I'll sit there dreaming of those good old days on old Alberta plain. Oh, carry me back to the plains of Alberta. I long to go back to the wide rolling range. Yodelady, yodelady, oh, oh, lady, oh, lady, yodelady, There's a spot that is dear to the heart of old cowboys.
When she stepped up into that spotlight in front of that huge audience, closed her eyes, and began singing that first verse. By the time she was just started into the song, you could hear a pin drop in that auditorium. Lorraine Rawls. Well, you heard Dennis Flynn a little earlier today talking about horses, and we have now the lighting crew shining this cowboy poetry spotlight on him today.
Cowboys pass these works by word of mouth in cow camps up and down the many trails of the West. The first one I found hanging on the wall in the home of my wife's granddaddy in Hyco, Texas, about 20 years ago. He's gone now, but the coat of the cow country hangs in my home. It don't take such a lot of laws to keep the rangeland straight, and there are books to write them in, 'cause there's only 6 or 8. The first one is a welcome sign written deep in western hearts. My camp is yours, your camp is mine, in all cow country parts. Treat with respect all women folk, same as you would your sister. Take care of neighbors' strays you find, and don't call cowboys mister. Shut the pasture gate when passing through, and taking all in all. Be just as rough as pleases you, but never mean or small. Talk straight, shoot straight, never break your word to man or boss. Plumb always kill a rattlesnake, and don't ride no soreback hoss. It don't take law nor pedigree to live the best you can. These few rules is all it takes to be a cowboy and a man.
Well, thank you so much for making the ride, and I sure look forward to having you here again next week at the same time. Thanks again to our support crew. That would be Mark and Kathy McMillan. And, you know, if you're looking for tractor parts, any kind, any make, any year, see Mark's page, bctractorparts.com. And remember, you can subscribe to Canadian Cowboy Country Magazine by calling 1-800-943-7336. Oh yeah, and the number to call for all the information on our 2019 Spirit of the West cruise touring the British Isles. We'll see Ireland, Scotland, England, and France by cruise ship next summer. The number is 1-800-530-0131. Till next week, I'm Hugh McLennan. Hope to see you down the trail somewhere real soon.